Hey, this is Mike with Family Handyman. Now we all need garage storage, and today I've got a project for you that'll solve just that. It's a pegboard wall, but not your traditional pegboard wall. This thing is really versatile. It'll take about a weekend, and the best part, you can scale it down to whatever size you need. Let's get started. You'll start with a 6-inch wide piece of plywood to create a guide to make sure that you have evenly spaced holes throughout the entire thing. Clamp it to a backer, and then you're gonna make your first 2 marks. Keep the backer clamped to the plywood, and then clamp the backer to the table of the drill press. Bore your first hole. Put a peg through the first hole so the backer and the plywood are pinned together. Then bore the second hole. To keep the holes consistent, make sure you put a peg into each new hole before drilling the next. When the jig's complete, lay down a piece of plywood onto a few 2x4s and line up the jig with the edge of the plywood. Clamp it together and then bore through the plywood using the jig as a guide. Rotate the jig to locate the top and bottom corners on the opposite side. Trace those holes, then flip the jig, clamp it down, and then bore the holes, lining up with the traced marks. When drilling these holes, make sure you've got something underneath the hole that'll prevent bad chip out from happening. Another thing I like to do is put the pegs in every few holes to make sure that the jig is kept nice and straight. With the outside columns bored, rotate the jig and index the jig with the holes in the columns. Then you can come by with a drill and bore each hole in each row. So after I've got my first sheet all drilled out, 288 holes, I don't need the jig anymore. I can just use that first sheet, lay a new sheet underneath, and use this as my new jig. Now our pegboard is going on this wall, but before we put it up, we need to build 2 small benches on either side of the door. It'll be a great place to sit down to put your shoes on, or a really nice place to put bins in with all kinds of gear. Then assemble the bench and attach it to the wall. Shim up the front of the legs to ensure that the bench will be level. Next step is attaching the first strips to the wall. Use the jig so that you don't run into any of the horizontal holes of the plywood. Place them about 2 feet away from each other and make sure they're level. So now I've got the first strips up and I'm ready to cut the plywood. Cut the plywood to fit around doors and corners. Tip the plywood up and attach them with trim head screws to each row of furring strips. I had to work around a door that was smack dab in the middle of the wall. And since the wall was being built out, I needed to extend the jamb of the door. So we've got our pegboard on the wall. Now we're gonna start building the accessories that are gonna help us get organized, starting with this closet cabinet. It's gonna be about 12 inches off of the wall, and it's gotta have a closet rod. So what I'm gonna do is pick a hole in the center towards the top, drill all the way through these 3 sheets, and I'm gonna put a closet rod in there. Once the closet's assembled, use a pair of pegs under the closet to hold it up while you attach it to the wall using cabinet screws. To make the pegs, use 1-inch dowels cut to about 7 inches long, then attach a washer to the end with a wood screw. So we're almost done. We just have a few small details to finish off. We're gonna add some contrasting stain and a protective finish. Then we can place our pegs, make our shelves and cabinets, and it's really easy to move all those pieces whenever you want. Now, you don't have to do quite the scale that we did. You can do it into a small corner of your garage or a small panel in your mudroom. It's really versatile. So for more great projects like these, head to familyhandyman.com.